Imagine this. You walk into a restaurant. A long table has already been set for a birthday dinner. Around 12 people are sitting there. Food has been ordered. Glasses are clinking. Laughter moves across the table. But one guest is a little different. He keeps picking up his phone, adjusts the angle of the plate, moves the candle closer to the cake, records a short video, then checks his screen. Who viewed the story? Who replied? How many reactions so far? Across the table, someone else is doing the opposite. No phone. Just listening. Nodding. Asking questions. Halfway through the dinner, he says, "Hey, how did your job interview go? Last time we talked, you were preparing for it," and suddenly, the person across from him lights up. Because someone remembered. Here's the strange part. One person is technically sharing the night with thousands of people online. But the other person is the one who's actually there. This raises an interesting psychological question. Why do some people feel almost no desire to share their lives online, while others feel a constant urge to document everything? To understand that, we need to start with something a little uncomfortable. Not everyone who leaves social media does it for calm or enlightened reasons. Sometimes, something pushes them away. A breakup, a period of depression, a time when life felt messy, while everyone else seemed to be posting highlight reels. Or maybe they shared something honest once, something vulnerable, and it was ignored or misunderstood. Experiences like that leave behind a strange emotional residue. They make people step back, not as a philosophical choice, but as a form of self-protection. A lot of people quietly disappear from social media this way. And that matters, because there's a common narrative that private people are somehow more evolved, more self-aware, more disciplined. But real life is rarely that clean. Sometimes people didn't leave because they were strong. They left because something hurt. But here's where it gets interesting. 10x. What happens after they leave? If you ask people who stopped using social media what they felt a few weeks later, many describe the same thing. Quote, "Everything becomes quieter." Not loneliness. Not fear of missing out. Actually, the opposite. It feels like a background noise suddenly disappeared. Imagine living next to a highway for years. Cars constantly passing, engines humming, distant horns. At first, it's loud, but eventually your brain adapts, and you stop noticing it. Until one day the road closes, and suddenly there's silence. You didn't realize how loud life was until it stopped. For many people, social media works the same way. The constant checking, notifications, the subtle pressure to stay visible, the quiet comparisons. All of it runs in the background of the mind. When it disappears, people often notice something surprising. Their thoughts feel clearer. And when you ask what they miss most about it, many pause, think for a moment, and say something unexpected. "I don't actually miss it. Why does that happen? Psychology offers an interesting explanation. Researchers in the Journal of Consumer Research found that when people expect to share an experience, they actually enjoy it less. Mu-man-wuek. Jenny-mani-wuek. Even before they post anything. Why? Because your attention gets split. Part of you is living the moment, but another part is already preparing the story. You start thinking, should I take a photo? Would this look good in a story? What should the caption say? You become both the participant and the documentarian, and those roles compete with each other. The result is subtle, but powerful. The memory becomes shallower. The emotional connection weakens. Because instead of fully living the moment, part of your mind is packaging it for an audience. People who rarely post often sense this intuitively. They may not know the research, but they feel the difference. At some point, they just stop paying that cost. But choosing not to participate in this kind of digital performance can come with a strange social side effect. People start asking questions. What are you hiding? Why don't you post anything? Are you okay? It's almost as if being invisible online makes others suspicious. In a world where visibility has become the norm, opting out can feel like breaking an unspoken rule. For people who've always been more private, this can create a strange feeling, like they're somehow doing life the wrong way. But psychology actually has a name for this tendency: private self-consciousness. It describes people who naturally direct their attention inward. End quote. Not in a self-absorbed way, but in a reflective one. They're more likely to ask themselves, what do I really think about this? How do I truly feel about this situation? Instead of asking, now lagi naiwominates plays. How does this look to others? Am I being perceived the right way? That difference might sound small, but over time, it shapes how people move through the world. Someone high in public self-consciousness constantly monitors their external image reactions, signals, feedback, approval. But someone higher in private self-consciousness does something else. They monitor their inner state, their thoughts, their emotions, their values. In a culture that optimizes almost everything for outward performance, that inward focus can feel unusual. But here's what most people miss. These individuals aren't disconnected from the world. In many ways, they're actually more connected to their real experiences, because their attention isn't constantly split between living and presenting. But this shift also creates another interesting consequence, one that many people don't expect, and it has to do with relationships. Let's go back to that birthday dinner for a moment. 12 people sitting around a table. One guest spent half the evening checking reactions to his story. Another simply talked to people, listened, remembered details about their lives. The next morning, the birthday person sent a message. Not to the one who posted the most, not to the one with the biggest audience, but to the one who paid attention. The message was simple. Thanks for coming. It meant a lot. That small moment reveals something important about human relationships and it connects directly to what happens when people step away from constantly sharing their lives online. Because something interesting tends to happen to their social circles. At first, the change can feel uncomfortable. When someone stops posting, they become harder to track. Before, people could just open an app and instantly know what was happening in that person's life. New job, vacation, dinner with friends. Updates came passively, with no effort required. But once those updates disappear, something subtle changes. If someone wants to stay connected now, they actually have to do something. Send a message. Make a call. Invite them out. And here's the surprising part, a lot of people don't. Not because they dislike you, but because the passive connection is gone. Without the feed, many relationships quietly fade. At first, this can feel painful. It can even create the illusion that you're losing people. But what often replaces those connections is something much stronger. The people who remain, the ones who still reach out, the ones who ask how you're doing without needing an update post, gent int analysankinsatral. They tend to belong to a very different category. These are the people who actually want a relationship, not just a window into your life. Psychology has been studying this difference for decades. One of the most famous long-term studies is the Harvard Study of Adult Development. Researchers followed people for over 80 years, tracking careers, health, life satisfaction, and relationships. After decades of data, one conclusion kept showing up. The strongest predictor of long-term happiness and health wasn't wealth, fame, or achievement. It was the quality of close relationships. Not how many people you knew, but how deeply connected you were to a few. This matters because social media often flips that equation. It encourages breadth over depth, visibility over intimacy, audience over connection. And when someone steps away from that system, they often rediscover something older, something quieter, relationships that exist without an audience, conversations that don't need to be documented, moments that only exist for the people inside them. If you talk to people who remember life before social media became dominant, many describe a similar feeling. Life felt more private, but also more personal. Ordinary moments didn't feel incomplete just because they weren't captured. Dinner with friends didn't need a photo to count. A beautiful sunset didn't need proof. The experience itself was enough. That instinct to simply live a moment without turning it into content is something many people are now trying to relearn. Because when every moment can be shared, there's a subtle pressure to share it. And that pressure quietly changes how experiences feel. But when someone steps outside of that pressure, a different mental state becomes possible. Presence. Not the kind that looks peaceful from the outside, but the kind that feels grounded from within. Imagine two people at a concert. One watches the performance through their phone, recording a video. The other simply watches the stage. Both are technically at the same event, but their minds are in very different places. One is preserving the moment. The other is experiencing it. Neither choice is inherently wrong, but the emotional impact is different. And people who rarely share their lives often gravitate toward the second experience, not because they dislike technology, but because they prefer something else. Ownership of their attention. When attention stays in the moment, something interesting happens to memory. Experiences feel richer. Details stick. Emotions attach more strongly. And over time, those experiences build something subtle but powerful. A sense that your life belongs to you. Not to an audience, not to an algorithm. Just to you. That's why some people who step away from constant sharing describe a feeling that's hard to explain. It's not exactly peace. It's not exactly freedom. It's closer to authorship, the sense that you are writing your life, not performing it. And here's the ironic part. For years, people who preferred privacy were often seen as strange. Why don't you post anything? Why are you so quiet online? Why are you invisible? But the conversation around social media is starting to change. More people are questioning the constant performance. More people are noticing how exhausting it can be to maintain a digital version of their lives. And suddenly, the people who never fully embraced that system don't seem so strange anymore. In fact, they may have been responding to something their instincts understood earlier. That attention is one of the most valuable resources we have. Where it goes determines how our life feels. If attention is constantly split between living and presenting, experiences become thinner. But when attention stays within the moment, life gains depth. So if you've ever felt unusual for not wanting to share everything online, if you've stepped away and people assumed something was wrong, or you've always felt that parts of your life were simply too personal to turn into content, there's a good chance you weren't falling behind the culture. You may have just been slightly ahead of a conversation the rest of the world is only beginning to have. And now, here's something worth thinking about. When you experience a meaningful moment in your life, do you feel the urge to capture it, or do you prefer to let it exist quietly? Everyone answers that a little differently. But your answer might reveal more about how your mind relates to the world than you realize. If this made you see your experiences differently, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy exploring ideas about emotional intelligence, human psychology, and the hidden patterns behind everyday behavior, consider following for more conversations like this. Because sometimes, the most interesting discoveries aren't about changing who we are. They're about finally understanding why we've always been that way.